So why don't we start things out by taking us a little bit through your background in the whole strength and conditioning, jiu-jitsu, martial arts end of things.
First of all, I'm a strength and conditioning coach, CSCS, and I started my career as a personal trainer. And I just decided somewhere down the line, I wanted to work with athletes as opposed to the regular Joe. At the same time, I pretty much got into jiu-jitsu as well. Started jiu-jitsu in 2003, and have been training ever since. Couple layoffs due to life, but pretty much I've been very consistent doing both things for a long time. First degree black belt under Frangina, Ricardo Frangina Miller from Paragon, and
Congratulations.
thank you. I got my black belt in 2013. I just decided to open up a couple academies. I have 3 academies in the surrounding LA area, and my main job, my main focus besides jiu-jitsu is really just training athletes. And I see a lot of area of opportunity. I just see a lot of stuff. I know I showed you the Tony Ferguson training videos.
Yeah, that was crazy. I hadn't seen that montage before. So just for the sake of the listeners and the sake of the viewers, take us quickly through what the background of that story. So UFC fighter.
Yes, Tony Ferguson is a UFC fighter, was going to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov, and he got injured slipping on some cables the week before the fight. And this is my assessment of everything. And for those of you that haven't seen the video, I believe the video is called "How to Get Injured" by Tony Ferguson. And again, this is not a knock on Tony or anything. This was a video montage of all the things that he did that probably could be done better. I'm sure he does a lot of things that are also very good and beneficial. I don't really know his coaches, but that kind of stuff is what I'm trying to hopefully educate some of the community in.
So I was appalled by his deadlifting form in that video. I mean, he's just bent over like a hunchback with one continuous curve through his back and picking up. Now, there are specialized deadlifts where you are curving through the thoracic and the lumbar spine, but this looked like a max effort deadlift.
Well, yeah, there was, especially that particular deadlift. He was doing a deadlift, and then for God knows why, he adds in 5 shrugs where he's putting max effort in, and that video was definitely not good for many other reasons too. There were also a couple dangerous balancing things that he did. There was one where he was balancing on his neck while doing a pullover.
Yeah, he was in like a wrestler's bridge.
Yes.
And then holding the weight above his head, and then lowering it down. So what's wrong with that, Ben?
Well, don't try it, okay? But just do a bridge and put any weight above your chest, and just let me know how that feels. Don't do it with a barbell like he did. But just to kind of continue with my background, that's I got into the business really to train athletes, and when I see athletes do things like that, mess up their weight cut, mess up their nutrition, there's just a lot of room there for learning, for education, and hopefully today I can dispel some myths and give some of the listeners some info on how to do it properly, or at least if I don't know the answer, find the right people to help them, right?
Okay. Well, so there's so much information out there in the strength and conditioning world. I mean, if I looked up crazy exercises to develop my forearms or whatever body part I wanted, I would find a whole bunch of people giving me a whole bunch of solutions. So how does the aspiring athlete choose between all these different exercises? How do they know which ones are safe? How do they know which ones are effective? And we're not even talking program design yet. You could apply the exact same question to program design. You could have an unsafe program consisting of very safe exercises. How do you go about applying critical thinking skills and evaluating different protocols, different exercises?
So Stefan, this is a kind of a tough question for athletes. For coaches, it's an easy answer to me, right? So if you're a coach, you have to be critical thinking, right? You have to use what I consider the most important thing in critical thinking is using evidence, right? Using evidence-based practice, right? If you're an athlete, I just hope that you pair yourself up with a coach that is using critical thinking. And really what critical thinking is just not taking everything that somebody says, despite their credibility, as just dogma, right? An example would be not using critical thinking. An example would be if I'm at the gym and the biggest guy in the gym comes up to me and says, "Hey Ben, I do this exercise every day and it gives me results. So you should do the exercise too," right? By me hearing that and saying, "Well, biggest guy in the gym, you're the biggest guy in the gym, so I'm going to listen to you." That is not using critical thinking. What I should do is...
Yeah. You don't know how big his parents were. You don't know what kind of steroids he's on. You don't know how much growth hormone he's cranking.
Exactly. You don't know how many people did his routine that did not survive his routine, and you don't hear from them anymore, right? How many people out there...
Survivor bias.
Exactly. So one of the things I use, at least in my the way I coach, is I use evidence-based practice. And have you heard of that before, Stefan?
I not in that exact term. I come from a science background, so we're always arguing about evidence. And even there, like the example that you just gave, a lot of people would think that, well, that's evidence. This guy's 300 pounds and he does, I don't know, plyometric deadlifts every day. That's evidence. But it's not really. It's a data point of one.
Low form, yeah, it's an n equals 1, or a low form of evidence. The strength of the evidence is
all
low.
It is a suggestion that you need to look, like, okay, maybe there's something to this plyometric deadlift thing, and maybe we should look at it in the future. Maybe we should. It's a suggestion for further research. The same exact thing applies to the supplement world. I ate fermented Siberian horsetail root mixed with, I don't know, Madagascar ginseng, and my elbow tendonitis disappeared. Therefore,
it's the beauty of evidence-based practice, and you can apply it to anything, right? You can apply it to nutrition. You can apply it to weightlifting, and really, I'm speaking to the coaches here, right? If you're an athlete, I don't expect for you to get into the science and the literature, but what evidence-based practice is and how it relates to critical thinking is you're using scientific research is one aspect, right? And then there's also the individual needs of your athlete, right? That's an aspect. And then there's your professional expertise and your experience, right? So if you don't have one of them, I would say lean toward the science. Okay, so sure. Using your example of the supplement, right? If I see a supplement and it's being sold at the GNC or one of the Nutri shops, and I buy it and I want to take it, I should know what the supplement does, right? And that is really what research is, right? I recommend at the very least you should go to a site like examine.com just to look at the research review. You're not actually reading the research, but you're reading a review of all of the literature written by somebody. Okay, so that is at the very least, right? And that's really what it is. It's a lot of coaches, especially athletes, they're not taking that step. They're just taking what's being said and just doing it as if, back in the day, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was doing these workouts that were insane. 2 hours, he was on, performance enhancers, but he wrote a book. And I had, when I was in high school, I remember all of my friends were doing that workout. Now, we all were, young and we survived, but, it wasn't optimal. Right. Sure. And if I was an athlete, that wouldn't have been good.
Now, I think in a sense, bodybuilders have an easier time than athletes because bodybuilders, if you're doing research on whether or not, I don't know, this supplement works or that supplement works, or whether it's better to do 5 sets of 10 reps of deadlift versus 10 reps of 5 sets of deadlifts. I think I totally screwed that up. Anyhow, different protocols.
I get it.
You can measure hypertrophy fairly easily. You can measure strength increase fairly easily. But in something like jiu-jitsu, in something like MMA, there are so many variables. It's not just all about strength. You're mixing strength with endurance, with explosiveness, with injury prevention, with flexibility in some cases, with a bunch of variables. So how do you get evidence-based research or evidence-based thinking for a very, very complex sport where it's not just all about muscular hypertrophy, muscular growth?
Yeah, I get I understand that it is tough when you add all these variables, but really the thought process should be the same. And you made a great example with the bodybuilding, because yes, in bodybuilding, you're only worried about one variable: hypertrophy, muscle gain. How much muscle can you put on? It's a lot more simple when that's it. When you add sports performance, which is more of what I do, you hit all of them. Strength, speed, agility, recovery time, heart rate. The ability to recover and lower your heart rate. These are things that it really takes experience. And in order to use evidence-based practice on these, you have to take each individual variable and research it. You have to go into it, right? So I'll take an example from something that I see a lot. I see a lot of people wearing those snorkel type looking things. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those masks?
the oxygen limiters.
Yes. So they, people use them for an increase in performance, but there's never been any evidence that I've seen to support the use of those things, short of maybe just using it to take a deeper breath, right? There is no benefit to performance by using those things, right? So that would be...
Are you talking about the ones that limit the amount of oxygen that you're getting, or the ones that supposedly strengthen the breathing muscles?
I didn't know there was a difference between the two, but I don't believe there was any evidence to show any benefit of either of those as far as increasing performance, right? So that's one example. Another example you could use would be like, power, right? How do I increase power? Well, you have to understand like a basic physiological, how you physiologically increase power, and that's increasing the force output with speed, right? So that you have to understand that. And then what I would look for are exercises or protocols that are supported in the literature that transfer the best to sport. Okay, and what I found, and by the way, there is no direct research on this. You can't just pull up a paper and it just tells
how
you
to
exactly
be best
what
sporter.
to do. Yeah, doesn't exist. But there's a researcher by the name of Matt Rea. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Rhea, and he is an expert on sports transfer. Okay, so transferring of what you do in the weight room to your sport. And there's 4 things that he's listed that made a lot of sense to me. And the number one, I believe, is it should be a standing exercise. Okay, so you notice that a lot of the sports that you're doing athletic movements in, you're doing it from a standing position, right? So you're transferring force to the ground. Okay, so that's one aspect of transfer into sport, is standing. Okay, another one is detached hands. So what that means is when you are exercising, you're using a bench press, for example, right? Your hands are not detached. You are gripping onto a bar. That is usually going to have less transfer to sport than if you were to do, for example, a push-up, right? Or a
But aren't the hands attached on the ground when they're? I mean, functionally, the distance between the hands isn't changing when you're doing a push-up.
Yes, but I believe the research that he's done indicates that you have to be gripping the bar. Okay. So if your hands are open, it tends to transfer more.
Okay.
Another one is, do you know what a landmine is? The angled barbell? Okay, so a landmine or an angled barbell is, and on my Instagram I have a lot of these things, but is when you hold a bar, right, just a barbell by the end, and you kind of wedge the other end into a corner, so that it can move freely, right? It's called a landmine.
Okay.
And that tool, it's usually you stick the other end into a hole.
Okay, yeah, or there are holders for them that go on the base of squat racks. Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that according to Mr. Rea, is one of the things that transfers the most to standing combat. Okay, he's a football coach, so when he says standing combat, he's talking about combat in football terms.
Sure.
But
double-handed push versus single-handed punch.
Yes, but MMA is very similar, right? So those are 2, right? Standing, self-support basically is standing, right? You're supporting yourself. You're not on a bench, right? So if you're doing a bench press, it probably will not have as much transfer to sports as, say, medicine
press.
ball, military press where you're standing up or something like that. Another one, the detached hands, right? If you're able to use a tool that does not include a bar, it's going to have more transfer. Single leg execution is the next one. So the third one, single leg execution. If you're able to do something from a single leg stance, it's going to transfer more to sports, including jiu-jitsu, right? If you think jiu-jitsu, are you ever doing like a leg press type movement? You are, but more than likely you're going to be playing guard. You play like De La Riva guard. One leg's doing one thing, the other leg's doing another thing, right? So single leg, one leg at a time, or a split stance, right? Like a lunge. These transfer more to sports. And then the last thing is the range of motion and the force in which you generate the force that you're generating with the exercise, right? So the range of motion, let's say in jiu-jitsu, right? I am doing a double leg takedown, right? A double leg takedown really is just a lunge, right? But notice that the body angle of a double leg takedown, it's not quite upright, right? You're not doing an upright lunge. What's happening with your lunge? You're leaning forward a little bit, right? So when you do your lunges, you should do them with a forward lean, which is actually how I recommend doing lunges, right? Your shoulder is in line with your knee and you're forward leaning. You should be able to take a shot, a penetration shot, in the same manner that you do a lunge. Okay, that would be something that transfers to sport. Doing a lunge, say with an upright torso, it's going to have much less transfer because the range of motion is completely different, right? So those are things that I think for the coaches, the athlete, it's going to be tough for them to jive all these things,
So you're saying the bench press is the single worst exercise for combat sports because it meets none of these 4 criteria.
I would say that it is not the greatest, but let's say you have somebody that is not trained, detrained, then it would probably be better than nothing. But I would say a push-up would have a far greater transfer. And this is, again, my opinion. I'm open to anybody that wants to challenge me on it, and I would love to change my mind if anybody has anything.
Of course. And I think it's fairly safe to say that the world's best expert in anything sport-related is probably going to have a different opinion 10 years from now than he does today. And if he's not, then doesn't deserve to be the world's top expert.
Oh, for me, it's every month. Every month there's a new thing. I just read a study on, supplements. I've seen some of your articles on supplements, Steph, and you're not very keen on a lot of them, and I would have to agree. But I just read an article or a study, today on how caffeine improves performance. Sure, it increases strength, power, all that's great, but you may not see the benefits of the work you're doing. As in, you may not acquire, your body. How do I put this? Your body kind of knows that you're on an enhancement, and it doesn't give you the physiological changes that you would get had you not used caffeine, right? So,
well, I'm a big, contrarian when it comes to supplements. I'm sure that there are some that work out there.
Absolutely.
But, creatine, I think, works for most people, for example. Caffeine works for most people, works for me. I don't drink coffee, and so I'm very sensitive to it. So if I really am trying to get a maximum, there's a local mountain I use. It's my benchmark for my cardio, right? I climb it. The fastest I've ever done it in is 42 minutes. When I'm fresh out of surgery and I've been down for a couple of months, it might take quite a bit longer. So it's my benchmark that I keep on going back to. I guess some guys use the bench press as their benchmark, right? How much can I bench? And they've been doing it for years, so they always have a sense of how in shape they are. And certainly the times I've done the best has been heavily caffeinated, which I actually take, caffeine tablets. I don't take caffeine tablets every day, but because I hate coffee.
That's the best way to do it, actually. All the
Really?
research done on caffeine is from anhydrous pills. They're not...
I guess it's just easier to quantify because they know exactly how much caffeine they're giving someone.
I'm drinking a coffee right now, right? So
Yeah.
I could get 2-3 of them at the same coffee shop, and if you measure, I guarantee you they'll be different, right? It's the way it's pulled, there's a lot of differences. But if you have the pill, not only is it cheaper than coffee by, I would say 50 times cheaper, you know exactly. You have that 200 milligram pill, you take it, you know what you got. Okay.
But you're saying it doesn't carry over to your non-caffeinated state, or
I'm
are
not
there
saying
suggestions
that.
that it doesn't?
I'm saying that preliminary research on rats, which is not humans, are saying that. Okay, and rat studies and animal studies, they don't always carry over, but it's the beginning of a little bit of knowledge that we have, right? So I wouldn't discount them completely, but I would be careful, right? There's things like that out there.
Well, let's talk about when people cite some weird ass supplement or some weird ass exercise. They'll often cite, I don't know, Bulgarian athletes found that they increased their vertical jump by 6 inches by taking this supplement or by doing this exercise. So obviously, at one level, that could be a lie, right? Because if they say that on the advertising for the supplement on the supplement pages advertising, one person in 1,000 is actually going to go and try and find that research.
Right.
So 999 people will be maybe moved by it. One person's going to go, oh, come on. But then the effect of sample size is also important. If we do a study on 3 people and we find an effect of, I don't know, fermented Siberian horsetail, it doesn't necessarily, and it's a small effect, that could entirely be by chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
On how big the effect is.
So what I would say is most well-known supplements and foods and things that are studied and taken by athletes that are confirmed by the scientific literature, you're not going to only be able to find one study. You're going to see things like multiple randomized control trials. You're going to see what I look for are meta-analysis or systematic review, which is a cluster
analyses of analyses.
Exactly. It's a cluster.
There might be 50 studies going into one study.
Sure. It could be 100. It could be 1,000. It could be like 5 too. But 5 is still better than 1. The strength of the evidence is stronger. So this is my advice to athletes and coaches is if there's a new supplement on the market and you don't know what it is and there's no research on it, I wouldn't jump to taking it. Take the things that have been proven in the literature. Things like caffeine, things like creatine. I believe beta-alanine has some good research so far. And then there's things out there that have already been proven, to evidenced to have no effect on what it's marketed as, right? Glutamine, right? You've heard of glutamine?
I've taken glutamine.
You've taken glutamine.
Name a supplement, I've probably tried it.
Glutamine is marketed as a muscle builder, right? It gains muscle, recovery, all this. It doesn't do any of those things. Okay, glutamine is actually pretty good for immune system health and also for like recovery from intense exercise. Okay, we're talking, you're running a marathon or something, and it's good for your gut. It's good for your intestines. No evidence toward muscle building. Okay, so that would be an example of a well-known supplement with tons of data, but the data shows that it does not work for what it's marketed for. So these are things that I wish more and more practitioners of jiu-jitsu, bodybuilding, whatever it is, it would just do a little research before you spend your hard-earned money.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is that if you and I start a supplement company, it's so much easier for us to come out with a new. We go to Indonesia. We do you and I travel to Indonesia and we go find some kind of fruit that's in a market somewhere and we make some outrageous claims and we do a study on you and I and we found that while we were in Indonesia, by eating this weird fruit from the jungle, we became 10% more flexible. Forget the fact that it's continuous warm heat and we're not working out and we're stretching every day. We're putting all that under the carpet, and now we introduced a new flexibility supplement, this new fruit from the jungle. By the time the scientific community swings around to actually do a proper study of this, we've left that one behind and gone on to the next 5 things. It's just so much easier to introduce new supplements and
or
make
we've already sold
claims.
We've already sold that supplement to the public and made a couple million bucks and disappeared.
Sounds like a good plan.
Do you remember there was a craze maybe like 10 years ago, green coffee bean? That was a big craze. People were taking these pills. You tried it. Yeah. Oh, well.
I didn't notice any difference.
Well, you weren't the only one because the research came out shortly after. Doesn't do anything. Okay, it was completely exaggerated claims by the companies making them, and I believe it made it on like one of the doctor shows like Oz or something, and it blew up. Right, became a huge market for it. Was no good. People wasted their money, and it sucks. I wasted my money too, by the way, so don't feel too bad.
Sure. Yeah, we're speaking from a position of authority here, having essentially the main effect of all these supplements being to make your urine very expensive.
The things that sucks about the supplement industry is actually the fact there's the placebo effect, right? Mm-hmm. So even if something doesn't work, it can have a very, very real effect on you, and it can have a very real effect on what it is that you're trying to do, right? So there has been many studies out there on the placebo effect, right? I believe there's a few on alcohol, right? The test subjects were given alcohol that tasted like alcohol. What was not alcohol? Okay, it was something else. There was no alcohol content in it. But after a couple drinks, they exhibited the signs. There was physiological signs that you cannot fake, right? Redness. I turn red, so I definitely can't fake it. And then so that stuff's very real, right? So that's why it's very dangerous to just say and listen to people who are telling you, oh, it works for me. It works for you. What do you mean it works for you? You cannot prescribe a placebo, because if it works for you, it may not work for me. But if the scientific evidence says that it works, period, then you can, I would say you can prescribe something like that because it's evidenced.
Well, there's the whole concept of a blind study where I give Ben number 1 green coffee tablets and I give Ben number 2 some harmless, starch pills, the control, and you don't know what it is that you're getting. So obviously that's a better level of test. But then there's also the double blind where I don't know what I'm giving you, because if I give Ben number 1 and like, oh, here, try this, and I give Ben number 2 like, hey, okay, here, try this, just how I'm giving you the stuff, how I'm administering it could have an effect, right? So it needs to be double blind, which is actually a high bar to clear. Like that's, if you're having enough people and doing a double blind study and having it properly reviewed, that's expensive. That's going to totally screw up our flexibility supplement from Indonesia business.
So that's one of the things where novice trainers and people that don't know how to excuse me kind of look at the data, they cannot see the difference, right? So there's a big difference of what you described, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials where I don't know what I'm giving you if you're the test subject and I'm the researcher, because I could influence your perception, right? That's why placebos work, is if I say, hey, Stefan, this pill is the greatest thing ever, and when you take it, you're going to you get this effect. Well, your chances of getting that effect are now higher because I have just put in your head that thing is going to happen. And there's a lot of people out there who think I'm crazy for saying that. It's not a conspiracy. This is real effect. Look up the placebo effect.
Sure. Every study that's ever looked for a placebo effect has found one. Like this is not this has been known forever in the scientific literature. And there's a ton of backflips that need to happen to make sure that you avoid this when you're actually doing a study.
What's more interesting about that too is actually the inverse of the placebo. It's called the nocebo. Okay, and what it is a placebo is a positive effect, right? I give you a sugar pill, you take it, you receive a positive effect, or I tell you some words of encouragement, you receive a positive effect. It's a placebo, right? A nocebo is actually the inverse. Is I give you a pill and I tell you that it's going to have a harmful effect, a negative effect, and you have it. Or if I give you some negative reinforcement and it affects you negatively, right? So that's the thing, that I think a lot of trainers and even just practitioners, they need to start, understanding is that you can absolutely influence a lot of things in your life negatively, like pain, for example. Do you know how pain in the body works, or in the brain works, Stefan? Do you have a general?
Not really. I mean, I know that the pain studies they do on rats are pretty sadistic. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about the actual biomechanical, or sorry, not biomechanical, the neurological pathways of pain?
Yeah, that's more of what I'm talking about. And the reason why, to me, this is important to trainers and pain science is important. It's you have to bear with me. This is a topic that is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to do my best to explain it.
As much detail as you want.
Okay. So this is an important topic to me because as a personal trainer, we talked about the nocebo effect. This effect is very real, and we can create pain in our clients in the form of negative talk, things like that. So let me first explain how pain works in the body and in the brain, and then it will kind of it'll make sense as to why this is important. So pain is a construct of the mind, right? Pain is something that originates in the mind, and it is. I'm not going to say it is in your head, okay, because it is not all in your head. Pain is very real. It is a very real experience for everybody, okay. But what happens is that people don't quite understand that tissue damage, right? So let's say I have tissue damage, right? Sprain,
tear a muscle in your forearm.
Yes. It is not related to pain, even though you will feel pain because there's an obvious effect here. But I'll give an example that will make this clear. A herniated disc, right? A lot of people in jiu-jitsu especially, they will have herniated discs, right? This is just a product of doing jiu-jitsu. Herniated discs in the literature is not a cause of pain. Okay, in fact, no tissue damage. It has a direct one-to-one cause to pain, meaning that there are people out there living and breathing with herniated discs much worse than any jiu-jitsu practitioner that probably don't experience any pain, right? And that's important to know because of the nocebo effect, right? You can manifest yourself into quitting jiu-jitsu because you think, oh man, this pain, I must have a herniated disc, my back must be broken. You go to the physical therapist, they don't understand pain science. Hopefully you don't go to one of those. And they tell you the same thing. They say, you can never train jiu-jitsu again because you're in pain. If you do this, it causes pain. What they're not understanding is that pain and tissue damage are not related one-to-one, right? Obviously, if you stab me in the hand, I'm going to feel pain, okay, for sure. But let me give you an example.
Well, it depends how much adrenaline you have going too. Like that's a good example of how that damage to pain connection can be interrupted, right? If you're hyped up on enough adrenaline, you'll feel it eventually, but maybe not right now.
You just hit the nail on the head, Stefan. That is exactly what I was going to bring up. Is imagine now that we're on a battlefield and we're at war, right? And I get I step on a nail, right? I'm probably not going to recognize I stepped on a nail because there's bullets flying, right? My life is in danger. Okay, why didn't I feel that? Because there are things that are more important right now. Okay, and your body can do that to you, right? So if I stepped on a nail, or even if I got shot, in a battlefield scenario, right? And I didn't realize it till the medic said, "Hey, Ben, you're shot." And I would look down and say, "Oh my God, what happened?" Okay, how that transfers into jiu-jitsu and in strength training is that let's say that you're an athlete and you do jiu-jitsu, and this is I'm speaking to the hobbyists here because most athletes are pretty tough. I've seen so many hobbyists that do jiu-jitsu, they get a little injury, maybe they sprain their back, they sprain their knee, and it just manifests into this huge thing, and then, now they're in the system, they're in the medical system, and they haven't trained in years, and they never come back, okay? Because what happens is you manifest that pain as part of the nocebo effect, and what begins as maybe a lower back sprain turns into you going to your doctor and your doctor ordering x-ray, and the x-ray shows a herniation, and you say, well, herniation equals pain. It does not, but you could imagine that. And then you go to a physical therapist says, oh my God, you can't do jiu-jitsu anymore, you have a herniated disc. These things, and sooner or later you're not training anymore, right? There's just misunderstandings and misapplications of the science.
And misdiagnoses. I mean, I remember
Absolutely.
One knee injury I had where, let's see, my chiropractor at the time attributed it to a misalignment of the spine, which fortunately he could fix. My massage therapist at the time attributed it to tight IT bands, which fortunately she could fix. I went to a physiotherapist, and they attributed it to something else, which again, fortunately, they could fix. Right. And then I went to a sports medicine doctor, and he attributed it to something else, and actually did fix it. So like, same injury, same pain, 4 completely different diagnoses, and one of them finally worked. I mean, I guess you ultimately have to try the recommendations arising from these. All these diagnoses are just hypotheses, really. Again, like, okay, this guy says it's a spinal misalignment. I guess I should do spinal alignment therapy, whatever that is. You know, my Chinese medicine guy says it's because my spleen 6 meridian point is overactive or whatever. I obviously don't know much. I mean, despite having done a whole bunch of acupuncture, or having had a whole bunch of acupuncture done on me, I'm clearly not an expert. Maybe if it had ever worked one time, I would have been more of a convert.
Has never worked, acupuncture, for you?
I probably had it 30 times with 12 to 15 different practitioners. So if there was ever a case where the placebo effect was waiting to happen, I wanted acupuncture to work.
Would you like to hear the research on acupuncture?
Sure, go for it. From mainland China or from anywhere else?
No. This is just from the literature in general. It's not from mainland. I am not an acupuncture specialist, but I have read the research, and I can kind of relate to your experience of going. You said you did it like 14, 15 times?
30 times at least.
30 times.
With different practitioners, because you always have the excuse, like, it's the no true Scotsman thing, right? Oh, that's not a real acupuncture guy. You should go to so-and-so. Okay, I'll go to so-and-so. Nothing happened. Oh, well, that guy doesn't really know what he's doing. You should go to this other guy, and he's in Chinatown, so he must be good.
Yeah, so your experience is pretty common, by the way. But the literature on acupuncture and its mechanisms are unclear, right? Nobody knows exactly how acupuncture works. But here is the crazy thing about scientific research, and I don't consider acupuncture to be a sham treatment, because the literature actually shows that it works. Okay, but here is where it gets muddy, and where I wouldn't recommend people spend their money on it. Is the literature shows that acupuncture works, but it doesn't matter where you place the needles.
Right. So maybe it's an adrenaline reaction, like, oh my God, I'm getting stuck with a needle. Look how deep it is. Whereas, I've had lots of needles stuck into me in my long and beaten up athletic career, so it's no longer a big deal. So maybe it's like, I mean, I'm actually about to try acupuncture again. It's a dry needling, right? I've got this elbow tendonitis that hasn't gone away, so I'm about to have a doctor go at it. A real doctor, not a naturopathic doctor. Boy, I'm going to get a whole bunch of hate mail from naturopathic doctors here, but like a real MD, go in there and try and break up the scar tissue. We'll see if it works. I may have a very special case of acupuncture doesn't work except for this one case.
Yeah, and what I recommend for athletes and trainers especially is don't knock, and this is actually an important point to cover, don't knock treatments because they're not science-based or whatnot. You don't know. There could be a mechanism that we haven't discovered. It could work for your athlete and it would fix their problem, but you went ahead and you meddled just that little bit extra, and they didn't do it, and they kept their pain.
Given that there are no likely negative side effects, if somebody brews up some crazy potion out of every item in a Chinese herbal store, I mean, probably some of that stuff can actually hurt you. Right? Some of that stuff can actually knock out your liver, knock out your kidneys, and those are hard to replace once they're gone. Until the nanobots.
Until the stem cells come. I would just say that there's a couple rules that I generally follow for trying treatments that are unsupported by science. And one is, does it cost a lot of money? Okay, if you're doing this treatment and it's not supported by science, oh, by the way, it's $500 a treatment. Okay, well then your opportunity cost there is a lot. The second thing is there any potential for a harmful side effect? Right. So if you're doing acupuncture, it is a little bit of a side. You're getting needles stuck in you, so this is somewhat dangerous, right? And it does cost money, somewhat dangerous to your wallet. So these are things
it's
that you
less
have to
dangerous
consider.
than flying down to Bermuda and getting stem cells from some other dude put in your body, and then find that you've got a second embryo growing beside your liver.
Oh yeah. So I would definitely weigh the risks of these things. Some low level treatments that have really no research but no risk would be like foam rolling, right, or massage. Try to find scientific literature on the mechanisms of massage and foam rolling and how it directly relates to how your body's feeling relaxed or it's giving you more range of motion. Nobody can find it. Okay, I challenge anybody to find direct evidence that is not that can be found by me as well, and it just doesn't exist. But we know that it works. One, and two is that we know that it does not have a high cost. Right, it's a foam roll, $10, and it does not have any side effects other than you lose a couple minutes of time. Right, that's it. So that's a good one. So that would be something that I would definitely use is foam rolling. Acupuncture, I wouldn't seek it, but if my athlete said, hey Ben, hey coach, I'm gonna do acupuncture this afternoon. I already set it up. This guy's awesome. He's from China. He did this great. I would say, great, go ahead. Let's let me know how it goes, and that'd be it. Because who knows? Maybe he does it. It works, and that's it. And the point I wanted to cover was just using evidence and using critical thinking and having knowledge. This is something that I see online a lot, and it bums me out a little bit. Is as you get more knowledgeable in your field and you become educated, a lot of times trainers become kind of how do I put this? They become pretty adversarial. They become very combative, and they start using evidence and research and knowledge as like a big stick to beat down and embarrass people online and say, oh, how dumb could you be? Didn't you read the research? And they pull up all these abstracts and spew them up.
No, I was busy training, actually.
Yeah, so the knowledge is really for you to help educate people. It's not for you to start fights online or to embarrass people or call out people's business. I don't really believe in reflexology, for example, right? But I'm not going to go and just shit on them. I wouldn't go and say, hey, you guys are running a scam business. How could you? I would never do that, right? Same thing with homeopathic medicine. Have you ever heard of that stuff?
Oh yeah,
homeopathy. So
yeah.
So another thing with very little scientific research, but it's sold in Whole Foods. It's in Sprouts.
Yeah, well, that's my standard whipping boy for evidence-free and expensive or potentially expensive treatments. Although there is now, I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. This is not a defense of homeopathy, but they've done studies of just about every organism, whether it's rats or plants or mice or whatever other poor animals, Drosophila that they torture, if they give a toxin to it, whether they give it cyanide or lead or radiation, the more radiation or cyanide or lead that you give it, the more of them die. Like, that's pretty obvious. The more poison, the greater the death. But at the very, very low end, a little bit of poison is better than no poison at all. So there's actually an uptick in survivorship as opposed to zero lead in your diet. A picogram of lead per day is better than 0 picograms of lead per day. A tiny bit of radiation is better than 0 amounts of radiation. Now, it's not a giant effect. It's not a homeopathy effect where we're taking some stinging nettle and emptying it into an Olympic-sized swimming pool and then scooping out the water there, and now the residual energy of the vibrating stinging nettle molecules has affected the water. But there is, I wish I could remember it. When the show gets bigger, I'm going to have a Jamie who's going to look this up and it'll pop up on the screen. I'm coming for you, Joe Rogan. Until that point, it's an interesting effect. And they think that it is that at those super low levels, if you're getting a little tiny bit of radiation as opposed to no radiation at all, that your radiation damage repair mechanisms get a bit of a workout. So it's kind of like working out, right? It's better that you do the occasional push-up and damage your tissues a little bit and allow your body to recover than it's to you're now more ready for pushing that tree off you than if you never did anything. So if you then ever get big cellular damage, big DNA damage, a big strain on your system to remove heavy metals from your system, that it's kind of been kept in shape.
It's kind of like when you're training jiu-jitsu, right? And the guy that is always the germaphobe, the guy that always jumps in the shower first and puts all this crazy stuff on him, antibacterial. They want no part of any germs, right? that seems to always, this is anecdotal, right? This is anecdotal evidence from me. That seems to always be the guy that comes down with the ringworm or the staph a month later. And I had a buddy in college who used to not wash his hands when he would eat. So it's pretty disgusting. I don't recommend this. But this guy would never get sick, and he never had food poisoning. We all went to a place to eat once in somewhere near Mexico. We all got food poisoning. Mm-hmm. Guess who didn't get food poisoning? The guy
who'd
never
been training
washed
his immune system.
Yes. So this is kind of, hopefully it's an example of what you described, similar. But yeah.
Yeah, I could see a mechanism for the ringworm and staph thing because, I mean, your skin isn't supposed to be a sterile environment. There's supposed to be a microbiome living in your skin, right? Like healthy bacteria, healthy fungi living in some kind of ecological harmony. And if you completely remove that and make it a wasteland, then, along comes a couple of staph bacteria and, this is a nice field to set up shop in.
Yeah, you have no defenders basically. Mm-hmm. You have killed your healthy bacteria, and I actually, when I was younger, I made a lot of mistakes when I was younger. One of the mistakes was my high school football coach used to tell me, "Oh yeah, you're sore, no problem. 800 milligrams of ibuprofen every day." So what do you think happened when I a couple years down the line, I had no gut bacteria anymore. So I was eating, whatever. It was just immediate, go to the bathroom, throw up, or worse. So, what happened was I did what you described. Is I wiped out all the good stuff, and all that was left was room for bad bacteria or other stuff to happen. Right. So it took many years and probiotics to get me back.
How's your kidney function after all that non-steroidal anti-inflammatory action?
Probably horrible. I didn't check, but nowadays I don't mess with that stuff at all. I take the topical. The one thing I recommend to my students, I believe you can get in Canada without a prescription, is Voltaren. It's a gel. It's the equivalent of ibuprofen in gel form, so it doesn't go into your body. Any kind of tendonitis type strains or chronic injuries or acute injuries, I just put that Voltaren gel on, and I'm good in a couple weeks. So I would recommend that.
I did try some topical diclofenac for this elbow.
That's what it is. Oh,
is it? Okay.
It's diclofenac. Yeah, Voltaren is the brand name for diclofenac. Yeah. Did it help? Did it help at all?
No, but this is a pretty persistent case, and I keep on doing things to make it worse. So I deserve it. If and when I ever get rid of this, I'm writing an article about all the things I tried. And the key point, like you said, is you start with the cheap and safe and low, the high, even if they're not high percentage, the easy to do things. Like I will try stretching it first before I'm going to go and pay somebody hundreds of dollars to dry needle this elbow. I remember with back pain. I had like surgeons recommending spinal fusion, or another guy like, well, why don't we remove this rib? And why don't we try the less invasive versions first? And fortunately, the less invasive versions did solve the problem. So so the thing with chronic pains and stuff is like, for example, low back pain, right? It's just what you had, I assume, lower back. Well, we had low back pain and thoracic pain. So the spinal fusion was because of course there's suggestion I have a herniated disc in the lower back.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Herniated discs heal, by the way. That's a common misconception. People think
one doctor said, which echoes exactly what you said. He says there's like people with all the symptoms of a herniated disc who, if you dissected them tomorrow, they don't have a herniated disc. And there's tons of people running around that if you dissected them, their disc would just be, totally destroyed, and they report no back pain. So this correlation between. And not to say there aren't people out there who have herniated discs and the pain comes from it. That's also possible.
For sure.
There's 4 possibilities here, right? Herniated, not herniated, pain, no pain. 2 times 2, that's 4. But there are people in all 4 of those boxes.
Yeah, for sure. And yes, you can get pain from a herniated disc. It could send a signal to your brain. Nociception is what's called, and you can have pain. You can also have a herniated disc, not know you have a herniated disc, never experience pain your entire life, right? And this is what got us on this was Tony Ferguson's deadlifts, right? Mm-hmm. And so yeah, that's the thing is don't follow workout advice online unless you know who you are unless you know that the person that's giving you that advice is using critical thinking, or you trust them in some way. Right?
Well, what about this survivor bias thing that we talked about earlier, where there's some dude who is a champion or a giant guy in the gym despite what he's doing, not because of what he's doing?
Yeah, so survivorship bias is basically discounting like a variable, right? And that variable could be anything. It could be genetics, it could be luck, it could be whatever, right? But survivorship bias is like if you take 500 people, right, and they all perform the same workout as this huge guy in the gym that's on steroids and performance enhancers and has great genetics, right? Maybe 5 people survive that workout and become huge, just like the big guy in the gym. But what people aren't recognizing is that 495 people didn't survive. They didn't get the results, and probably half of those people are injured because their bodies could not handle. That's survivorship bias, and that's why it's very dangerous. And again, I'm criticizing Tony, not personally, but just that video was not good. He didn't put that video together, I'm sure, but even to have that stuff out on the internet is dangerous. If one person does it, it's bad.
Well, I've often said, I mean, I've never fought in the UFC, but if I did, and they came by to film me, they did like the Stephen Kesting All Access thing, I could either show running on the treadmill and doing push-ups and doing burpees, which would be boring, or I would take a snorkel and I would, put the treadmill sideways on the wall, and I would run up it upside down in a handstand while breathing through a snorkel, while having somebody, apply a blowtorch around me to heat. Like, it would be as weird as possible, because that way people would be looking and they wouldn't be bored. So I wonder how much of this, say the Tony Ferguson video, I don't know the guy. I'd love to have him on the podcast. Tony, if you're listening, if you want to come tell your side of the story and call Ben a poo-poo bum head, you totally can.
Don't do it.
You totally can, but I think some of this is like, okay, what crazy exercise are we going to show them?
I totally agree. I totally agree that a lot of it is for a show, right? Mm-hmm. And that's fine. That's fine. If you're just doing it for a show, you're not doing it in your real training, great. But you're putting it out there, and people that don't know any better are going to try, and that's the problem. And I'll be honest, I kind of I've met Tony, and we're in the same area, right? We're in the same. I've trained with him. I think before he was Tony. I didn't really even know who he was at the time, and I'll just put it this way: that's who he is. Doing those things, that's who he is. I can totally see it. But again, just that type of stuff. Don't follow workout advice from your heroes, right? Usually the biggest guy or the most jacked guy on Instagram or the guy with the most followers on Instagram, that's not the guy, okay? That's not the guy you should be listening to. You should be listening to, guys that look like us are actually probably the more likely to be, knowledgeable personal trainers. They're average looking. They're not exceptionally buff or huge or anything like that. And that's what I found to be the case. I'm sure there's exceptions. I'm sure there's great coaches that are also as jacked as they are knowledgeable. But you understand why usually that's not the case, right? If you're focusing on knowledge and research,
you're not in there training.
Yeah, exactly. You're not in there spending 5 hours a day in the gym if you're researching, right? So the best trainers are usually the average looking ones.
Okay.
Usually.
Well, we've talked a lot about things that you shouldn't do and things you should be careful of. So I think my audience will kill me if I don't pick your brain and get, I don't know, we slammed supplements, and I know I'm pretty much an anti-supplement guy. Why don't you talk about the supplements that you think work, and why don't you talk about sort of the best exercises for jiu-jitsu and combat sport?
Okay, the supplements that I would say it depends on what you're looking for, right? If you're looking for performance, the list is short. The list is short. I mean, creatine monohydrate has been the most widely studied supplement in the world. Caffeine is the most widely used supplement in the world, and these are all supplements that have evidence behind them. They all have they're relatively safe. I mean, I have to put this out there, is be very, very careful taking caffeine. Actually, just don't even do it. Don't take caffeine in the form of a powder. Okay, I know that I believe recently somebody killed themselves taking caffeine in the form of powder because a tablespoon, right, is not a teaspoon. And if it says a teaspoon and you put a tablespoon, you're dead. And I believe there is a threshold. I think it's not high either. It's like a couple thousand milligrams. In which if you take that threshold, if you pass that threshold, you will die. You will die of cardiac arrest. So be very careful with caffeine. Do not take the powdered form of it. Okay, I'm just going to put that out there so nobody does. Pill form, coffee, energy supplements like a drink with some caffeine in it is all great. Okay, creatine, do not go for the fancy, the multicolored label with the crealkaline. Just creatine monohydrate, cheapest form of creatine. Take about 5 grams a day. Caffeine is more of a dose based on your tolerance, but the general research says 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of your body weight. So I believe for me, the upper end is like in the 500s and the lower end is in like the 300s, right? So that's what you want to take for performance. Okay, these are things that you want to take for performance.
So that's quite a bit. I mean, that's in the realm of
is.
3 to 5 espressos.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what is in the research, right? So many people will probably get the effects at lower doses. I would start moving from low to high. I would start with a double shot of espresso, right? You just go to Starbucks, get a double shot of espresso, see how it improves your workout. If it does, great. Maybe ramp up from there, but don't start off with 500 milligrams. Don't start off with two or 3 pills. Start on the low end. Okay. Then there's supplements for recovery, right? So supplements for recovery. There's some general ones that people take. Fish oil has been kind of beaten down recently in the research. The advice nowadays is to more take less fish oil, but eat more oily fish, right? Like salmon, mackerel, things like that. Can help recovery by lowering inflammation. A big one that I think people in jiu-jitsu especially need to take is turmeric. Curcumin is the other name for turmeric, which is you've had curry before.
Yeah.
It's the yellow stuff. Mm-hmm. It's the yellow stuff in curry, and what that does is it decreases inflammation in the body, and there's some systemic effects too, and I think that is definitely a recovery supplement that you should take. So fish oil, turmeric, vitamin C. I think vitamin C is very useful for repair
Has that
of
not
muscle.
been debunked? I mean, people have been looking for vitamin C effects ever since Linus Pauling was recommending, 15 grams a day.
I don't.
But that's mostly
so.
with regards to effects on colds and flus.
Right. So I actually do believe that has not been debunked that I know of. I mean, I could be wrong. There could be research out there. But vitamin C, especially for athletes, it has some effects to recovery. So you want to definitely be getting enough of that. As far as recovery, I think that's about it. I wouldn't really take anything past a couple of these things. It's just anti-inflammatory. You just want to get the runaway inflammation down, right? You don't want to eliminate inflammation completely. So I would not be downing, ibuprofen, things like that, just to recover from training. I would take things like fish oil, vitamin C, and turmeric, things like that.
Well, it gets so tricky because things like ice baths, which probably reduce inflammation, there's a big debate about, okay, if ice baths reduce inflammation, but your goal is hypertrophy, or your goal is to actually stimulate muscle growth, well, then you want to be careful about timing your ice bath because you actually want some inflammation so your body starts responding to it and growing. And I'm vastly oversimplifying a literature that I've not really had a chance to look at. But point is, yes, it's good. It's anti-inflammatory. Everyone thinks that anti-inflammatory is good, but not necessarily. It's just like boost your immune system. Well, if you boost your immune system too much, you're going to end up with an autoimmune disorder like, lupus or something, as your body starts immune system attacking itself. So just these buzzwords of, boost your immune system or reduces inflammation. Yes, but, sorry, I totally interrupted your list of supplements at work.
No, no. I actually, you brought up a good. You can consider ice bath a supplement. By the way, it's not a dietary supplement, but it's a supplement to training. And interestingly enough, I just read a paper that came out last week on ice baths. And ice baths. I remember what we talked about with caffeine and things like that. The more you take, right, the less of an effect it can have over time. So with ice baths, not only could it blunt the inflammatory effect and make you not recover, get the adaptations of the workout, over time it's going to decrease its effects, period. So let's say if I have an ice bath today, and I do it tomorrow, and then I do it every day of the month, right? By the end of the month, it's not going to have the same effect. Okay. Not only that, the effect that it has could possibly be a negative one. And it's the same thing as when we talked about the coffee and the caffeine thing, right? As you after you work out, if you do this ice bath and eliminate all your inflammation, then you may not get the benefits of the training session you just did. Okay, so I'm very careful with things like ice baths.
Unless it's purely a skill-based training session. Like if your goal is to get better at, I don't know, inside out, upside down spider guard, but it may, your main adaptation there might be skill, hand-eye coordination, timing. So it may not serve your purposes to come out of that training session super sore. But if you're coming out of a conditioning session, well, maybe you should feel it a little bit.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that just use it with caution and use it. Don't do it every day. It's like everything. Do not do it every day.
It's also hard to study. I mean, it's pretty hard to control for the placebo effect of going into an ice bath. We're going to take two people and we're going to pretend that this is an ice bath, except it's not actually cold. How do you test? There's going to be one hell of a placebo effect.
Yeah. It's a big thing right now in my area, LA area, is the cryotherapy. Right?
I've done it.
Huge. And so, it's for the most part, it's the same. The research doesn't quite support its use, but if it feels good and it doesn't, put a hole in your wallet, just do it. It's not a bad thing.
I didn't notice a large effect. I maybe noticed a small effect. Probably did it, I want to say 8 times in 3 weeks, maybe. So, of course, there's somebody going, it's a no true Scotsman again. No, you should have been doing it every day.
Yeah.
Well, you only went to minus 120. You should have gone, or whatever it was. You should have gone to minus 500, which I know is not a temperature, but whatever.
What's the first thing you noticed, Stefan, when you got into an ice bath versus cryotherapy chamber?
That is not as cold. I think an ice bath is more miserable.
Oh, yeah. So that is an important point, because if it's not quite as cold, then are you still getting because when I get an ice bath, I am, your skin's turning color, something is happening. I'm not too sure, even, without doing any scientific research, just thinking about, it's just really cold air hitting your skin. Is it going to have that effect, So
I did ask this of my cryotherapist, and I'm seeing as I've already pissed off the homeotherapists and the chiropractors and the acupuncturists. I don't want to also alienate the cryotherapists. So the answer to that was, you're not actually trying to cool the muscle. You're not actually trying to cool the underlying tissue. I mean, you do a bit. You're trying to elicit a nervous system response. You're trying to get your cold receptors in your skin to go nuts and then release, I think it was serotonin or maybe dopamine. Anyhow, it was a neurotransmitter response to the cold sensors in the skin getting triggered. That was the argument. I don't know, again, how that's backed up by research. So
yeah,
it wasn't
I'm not
necessarily
sure
about making you super cold.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. And that if any trainers are listening to this, I would say if you're ever told something you're not sure of, just tell people you don't know. Because I know a lot of trainers that they would hear something like that and say, "Oh, well, the actual thing is this, isn't it?" And it's I don't know, so I have no idea whether or not that is true or not. But until proven otherwise, I would say sure, I believe it. Let me go over one more supplement that I really think jiu-jitsu athletes should take, and this is Obviously protein, right? Obviously whey protein or some vegan plant-based protein. If you're like me and you can't take whey protein, take like a vegan type of protein. And the supplement is collagen. Okay, collagen. The one I take is called Great Lakes. It's in a green bottle. It's relatively cheap, and I think it's there's been a lot of research out there on collagen, kind of helping just rebuild certain aspects of your joints that people are deficient in. It's a supplement called glycine that's in collagen, and so I would recommend, especially grapplers. They're just getting banged up every day. Collagen. Hydrolysate, I believe, is how you take it. It's a powdered form. Doesn't taste like anything. Throw it into your protein. It makes your protein a little chunkier, and that's it. Those are pretty much all the supplements, I would say.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but like gelatin is just to cook down joints and the bones, and that turns into Jello if you mix it with water.
Yes,
but the collagen is the enzymatically broken down gelatin. I think that's correct.
It's the crushed.
Jamie, call that up.
It's the crushed powder. It's the crushed powder. So it's before they've cooked the collagen is before they've cooked it. Cook it, becomes gelatin. That's at least what I believe to be the mechanism.
Okay.
So for the exercises, no, sorry.
No, that's interesting. I mean, it's got to be the thing that's had, and if you know the mechanism here, let me know. The thing that had me worried about sort of collagen/gelatin is that it's not like you swallow, okay, well, I need, collagen in my joints, therefore I'm going to eat collagen and it's magically going to go from my inside of my stomach to my joints. Because it's going to get broken down and go in the bloodstream first.
Yes, it's the nutrients.
Okay, so it's the high glycine content of collagen?
Yes, it's the glycine, it's the high, well, it doesn't have a very high glycine content, but it has a lot more than most things. It's the content of the collagen that you're absorbing, and hopefully it's getting to where it needs to go. Right, it's going to help you have the nutrients that are needed to rebuild or repair certain things like joints, like tendon, right, ligament, things like that. And at least this is the last I remember of what I've read on the topic, is that muscles. Tendons and ligaments take about 5 to 7 times more amount of time to heal than a muscle, right? So this is something that a lot of people don't think about, right? They think, I got a little joint injury here, I'll just take a day off and I'm back, right? And it may be possible with a muscle injury, but with joints, they don't tend to heal as fast, right? So taking supplements for joints is I would say very important. Okay. So to get to your question about the exercises for jiu-jitsu, I would say it's a tough question, but there's a few basic exercises that I would definitely incorporate, just based on how jiu-jitsu looks, right? So the hip thrust, right? The glute bridge, right? You've seen the videos of Keenan doing the hip thrust with like 400 pounds and things like that.
Yeah, a padded bar. He's got his back on a bench. He's got his feet on the ground, and he's basically doing the pelvic thrust vertically with a bar sitting on his lap.
Yeah, so that's a hip thrust. Is you have exactly how you described. Back on the bench, thrust it up. It's just exactly like a bridge in jiu-jitsu, a bridge and roll, no roll, but just the bridge, and then you do that. Okay, I would say to Keenan that he's probably using a little bit too much weight. Okay, believe it or not, the glutes, although being the most powerful muscle in the body, is primarily is comprised of primarily slow twitch fibers. So you should not be trying to explode 500 pounds off of your crotch area and trying to move that kind of weight. I would do sets of maybe 8 at the lowest, and probably upwards of 20. I would use much less weight. Start with just the tens on each side, right? Just start very low, and the hip thrust is a great exercise. I have this theory that if more athletes professional athletes did hip thrusts, you'd see a lot less injuries in sports. And the reason behind this line of thinking is almost all athletes I know, they do squat and deadlift, right? Squat and deadlift, squat. All their coaches do squat. What does squat and deadlift transfer to most? It transfers most to jumping, right? When you jump, you transfer what you get from squatting and deadlifting for the most part. But the hip thrust, right, the forward and back horizontal loading of the hip thrust, what does that transfer more to? It transfers more to sprinting, running, forward and back movements. So if more athletes would do less squats and deadlifts and more hip thrusting, I would gather that there's going to be less injuries as far as in running type sports. And to me, it makes sense just based on what I've said, and also if you think about it, how many athletes do you see actually doing hip thrusts? I don't see that many. So I think the hip thrust is a great exercise for athletes in general, but it has a direct transfer to jiu-jitsu because what are you doing? Is you're bridging all day. Your side control mount, you're gonna have to bridge somebody off of you, right? And the guy I would recommend the listeners check out on this topic is Brett Contreras. He's the guy he's the inventor of the hip thrust exercise. So he's done all the research. Look him up, Brett Contreras. So that's one of the exercises that I would recommend for jiu-jitsu as a staple exercise is the hip thrust motion. All right.
Okay.
Another one would be rowing. I think rowing is very important, especially from a position in which you're standing.
You mean like a dumbbell row or like a concept 2 rower?
Not a concept 2 rower.
Okay.
A dumbbell row, barbell row. I have one of my favorite exercises for rowing is if you place 2 kettlebells on the floor, right, and then you row one of them while you keep one of them on the ground.
Okay.
And then you row the other one, right? So what it teaches you here is the concept of base, right? In order for you to row a heavy kettlebell, you have to have your other hand based into the other kettlebell, right? And what does that look like? Guard passing, right? If you try to pass the guard and you don't, and you have your other hand's not based down, you try to control your opponent's leg, it's very, very weak, right? So that's another one, rowing. Hollow bodies. I think hollow bodies, which are a gymnastics move, in which how do I explain this? It's like if you were to lay flat on your back and put your hands overhead and your feet are toes pointed out and you're kind of like a banana and you just rock back and forth. I'm sure anybody can look up hollow bodies and they'll know what it is. But think about hollow bodies as what you're doing when you're playing guard, right? When you're playing guard, your core has to be just fired, right? You cannot have a loose core when you're playing guard, or else you have no connection between your upper and lower body, right? So hollow bodies, any exercise in which you're laying on your back and your core is engaged is going to be beneficial to jiu-jitsu. So another exercise that you can see it on my Instagram or just search it up online is dead bugs. Dead bugs is a good exercise in which you're moving your legs and arms synchronously as your core is engaged, right? So that's a good one. So any type of core engaged supine or lying down exercise. Like I said earlier, the lunge, right? The lunge done properly, right? Not properly. The lunge done with a forward torso lean.
Combatively.
Yes, it's almost like when at the bottom of the lunge, it should almost look like combat base, right? It should almost look like that's how you should do most of your lunges if you want transfer to jiu-jitsu. Let me see here. A Turkish Getup I think is very useful for jiu-jitsu. A lot of times when you're doing something like X guard, right? You're essentially doing a Turkish Getup.
Yeah.
That's the sweep from X guard Getup. I would say single leg Romanian deadlifts are very important, right? If you think of the X pass, right? What's an X pass? It's a single leg Romanian deadlift, right? So,
with a kettlebell base at the same time.
You could add base, but just that motion. It's also a down block, right? If you wrestle, a down block is a single leg Romanian deadlift. But you'd be shocked at how many. I've seen brown black belts that just they couldn't do that motion if I asked them to, but they're somehow doing jiu-jitsu, which is I'm not going to say that the jiu-jitsu is not good, but they're probably not getting the most efficiency out of the jiu-jitsu if they're not able to do basic movement patterns that are similar to a move, right? So I've covered a few. Let me think here. Isometric squeezing, I think, is very important because in jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of squeezing, right? So isometrically, as in just like hugging onto something and squeezing the crap out of it, that I think is also important in jiu-jitsu. An exercise that you can do is you can grab a smaller those beanbag type balls that you see people slam.
Medicine ball.
Medicine ball, yeah. You're not supposed to slam those to the ground. You're supposed to, toss them. I guess they explode. At least at my gym, that's the rule. You take those and you just kind of just gable grip it and just squeeze it and hold it for time. And I think that's very useful for jiu-jitsu. And then other than that, if you're not trying to go and do sports specific for jiu-jitsu, just general strength conditioning is going to be very beneficial. Just squats, deadlifts, pushes and pulls, some accessory movement. I think biceps curls have use in jiu-jitsu. A lot of times people say, curls are not functional.
Your armbar defense of last resort.
Yeah, not only armbar defense, right? If you think about if you're playing, like, for example, a collar and sleeve guard, right? You're essentially doing two hammer curls the whole time, right? You're using your biceps to engage the collar and sleeve guard, and obviously your lats as well. So just standard strength conditioning moves will probably have a general transfer to jiu-jitsu, as long as you're using movements, thinking of movements and compound exercise as opposed to like body parts, right? So I don't want to criticize the guy again, but he's obviously very successful. But Gordon Ryan, right? Have you seen his workout? It is essentially an Arnold Schwarzenegger pumping iron workout.
Well, he did have a pretty amazing body transformation in a short time, so you would expect that there was a lot of body transforming exercises.
Yeah, yeah. So he does basically a body part split.
And isn't his girlfriend a pro bodybuilder or a elite level bodybuilder?
Yes.
I think she's his coach, so she's going to be going to what she knows.
Yep. And obviously it doesn't have a negative effect on him, right? He's winning and whatnot. But here's what I tell people who say, Gordon Ryan's doing it and he's successful, well, I should do it. Well, you don't know that he could possibly be even better. There's a chance, it's hard to imagine, but there's a chance that he could be an even better jiu-jitsu player, even better athlete if he had a strength conditioning regimen that more mirrored, sports transfer.
Again, it's the data point of one.
Yes, exactly. And you don't know if he's doing that stuff for show and actually he's doing a real strength. Who knows? So those are all things that I would say you'll never know, right?
Okay. Well, I got the chiropractors and the homeopaths coming for me. You got Gordon Ryan coming for you. I think my odds are better.
Oh yeah, I mean, I actually trained with a guy once at one of my old professors' gym, Sean Williams. He destroyed me. He was a purple belt, and I was a brown belt. I just could not get out of this guy's Kimura back control. Just couldn't do it. I've never, I'm relatively strong, and one of my best moves is the Kimura. I haven't been Kimura'd in years. Gordon Ryan Kimura'd me probably 4 times in one day. So that's that.
I know you've got opinions about weight cutting. I mean, I think that weight cutting is actually quite a dangerous activity, but it's just part of many aspects of, especially MMA. So how can you do weight cutting properly? What mistakes do people make, and how do you do it without either blowing out your kidneys or making your brain so susceptible to concussion that you end up with CTE?
Yeah, well,
that's questions.
I get the gist of it, but that's a serious concern. Is should you before I go into this should you even be weight cutting if you're going to take punches to the head? That's not an answer that I have. That's not a question that I can answer. So with that aside, all right, I'm just going to say what I would do and what I believe to be the best method of weight cutting, right? And there's really 2 forms of weight cutting, right? There's cutting calories and eliminating your mass, right? You're just getting smaller, period.
We're 6 weeks out from a match or a fight or a competition, and I got to lose 20 pounds because they weigh in right before we compete.
Right. So that's cutting mass, right? And then there's also cutting water. These are two separate things that people need to understand right from the get-go. If you cut mass, right, you're not really cutting water as well, but you can do both simultaneously. Usually, you will cut water the week before the competition. So let's use MMA as an example for now, because jiu-jitsu gets complicated due to the weigh-in and then you're fighting. So let's say MMA, right? So what I would say is when you're cutting weight in the form of mass, which is you're just trying to get smaller, let's say 6 weeks, 8 weeks out, the number one thing you have to, it's the universal rule of nutrition is you're going to have to consume less calories than you ingest. People debate me online and even in person about this and say, oh, special paleo diet and special, this diet. But guess what you're doing? When you're eliminating a food like the paleo diet or the keto or whatever, you're eliminating macronutrients, you're eliminating grains, whatever it is. What do you think you're tricking your body into doing? Eating less, right? So at the end of the day, you will ingest less calories. So that is the law of thermodynamics, right? Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. You have to eat less, right? So let's say I'm training a fighter and we're 8 weeks out. Okay, I have to monitor how many calories this fighter is ingesting per day, and it's got to be under his the amount he needs to sustain his body weight. That's number one. If you do not understand this, you have no business helping anybody cut weight. Okay, period. Okay, so that's first and foremost. So I might have. Let's say it's Max, right? Max Holloway. Let's say he comes to me 6 weeks out and says, hey, I need to cut 20 pounds, right? I would say, look, 6 weeks, 20 pounds is not a big deal considering he's at the 155, I believe. So I would have him go on maybe a 300 to 500 calorie deficit per day. He would just eat 300 to 500 calories less. And this number could be any number. It doesn't have to be exactly anything, but it has to be under. And I would have him do that for, pretty much up until the week before the fight. And then we would start entering, we would keep our calories at that low level because we can't be gaining weight, the week of. But at this point, we would then start the water cut. Okay. And the water cut begins with a load. Okay. Usually, this is something that a lot of trainers don't quite understand is that you water cut by super loading water. So the week before, I might ingest, and I have a formula for this, but I might ingest 2 to 3 gallons of water for my fighter. I might tell my fighter to ingest 2 to 3 gallons of water for 5 days, right? Say Monday, say the fight is on Saturday, right? The Saturday before, we will start super loading water. So I'll have my fighter, I'll have Max do let's say 3 gallons of water. Okay, 3 gallons on Saturday, 3 gallons on Sunday, and this is a lot of water. Okay, so this is not a small amount. Okay, and the idea here is that you're telling your body, oh, I'm getting all this water. I'm going to have to pee. I'm going to have to use the restroom a lot. I'm going to have to sweat a lot. And then towards the end of the week, when you don't have that water, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to dehydrate yourself. So on Saturday, I would have them consume 2 to 3 gallons. Sunday, 2 to 3 gallons. Monday, 2 to 3 gallons. All the way up until about, I would say, Wednesday or Thursday. And then we start tapering. Then we start going maybe 1 gallon on Thursday. And then on Friday's the weigh-in. Okay, so then on Wednesday we would do 1 gallon. On Thursday we might do half a gallon or a quarter. And then on Friday, that's the weigh-in day, nothing. Maybe an ice cube, maybe something. And that alone, just the load, right, alone should allow somebody to lose. Depends, again, on the person, on genetics, on their state. They might lose up to 10 pounds. They might lose 5 pounds.
Do you manipulate sodium and potassium as well? I know a lot of bodybuilders will, like during the water super loading, they'll also be adding more sodium to their diet. And then they'll go super low sodium for the last few days. So their system's gotten good at excreting sodium.
You can. There's certain things you can do with sodium and fiber and also let me see, sodium, fiber. You can. And the big one though here is carbs. The big one is carbs. Is if you want to lose the last week, right? If I want my athlete to really shed some weight, you got to eliminate carbs. Okay, because what happens with carbs is glycogen, absorbs water. So when you take out the carbohydrates in the diet, you lose glycogen, and water will excrete itself from your body. So this is why people are so crazy about the keto diet and the low carb diets, because the first 2 weeks of doing it, you lose like 10 pounds. It's all water, right?
Right.
So this is why we can use this to our advantage when we're training fighters. And the week of, if I take out, the big one is carbs. Sodium is big too. You can't be going crazy on sodium, but carbs is the big one. And then once we hit, so Saturday we water load. We water load up until Friday. On that day, we do not ingest water. So we wake up, check our weight. If it's good, then we're good. Okay. Now the last part of this water cut is the well, I've done the water load, but now I'm still over by, let's make it pretty drastic. Let's say 10 pounds. Let's say, oh shoot, I have 10 pounds to cut, and I have basically 1 day. Okay, what am I going to do? Okay, let's
Amputation.
say well, you could maybe, it depends on the person, but some people's hair could be 1 pound. So there's a lot of stuff you could do. But the main thing is, at this point, this is where a lot of coaches start doing crazy stuff that just goes off the rails. We have to do like a hot tub, okay, and I recommend jacuzzi or hot tub as hot as you can handle, and that's it. Okay, don't put green alcohol. I've seen people put Epsom salt. It's not. It's the heat. The heat of the water. Is how it works, right? Osmosis. Okay, you cannot absorb the water in through your skin. It can only come out, right? So I put my athlete into a. It depends, right? If we have a place that has a jacuzzi, I'll try to dial it up to the hottest setting. Have them sit in there for pretty much it's just 10 minute goes. 10 minutes, get out, dry off. We check the scale. Back in. 10 minutes, dry off. We check the scale. 10 minutes until we make the weight, right? That's all really that you need. And sometimes we can do it with 5 minute goes, right? 10 minutes is a long time when you're already dehydrated. I rarely ever do things like the sauna. Okay, I think the sauna will destroy your performance. Just that dry air will mess up your breathing pattern. There's a lot of things that I've not had good success with the sauna, but I save it for the very, very last thing. So let's say we're in the hot tub, maybe the water's not hot enough, or whatever. My athlete's not losing water weight anymore, and we've done 2 or 3 rounds, and they're still 2 pounds, 3 pounds, whatever it is, 5 pounds away. Then I will last resort. We're gonna hit the sauna wrapped in like a burrito, and we might even put on that Albaline crap that people put on, the makeup remover. And that's like if we have to go there, then I'm panicking at this point. We didn't do the weight cut right. It should be a very easy process.
What about rehydration afterwards? This has changed a lot with USADA, because of course
IVs.
The dirty little secret of weight cutting or water cutting was that basically guys would weigh in and they'd go get an IV right away, and they'd put all kinds of crap into the IV too to make themselves feel normal. So that's much harder, I think, illegal to do now. So how about rehydrating? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, there's actually people out. I don't agree with this. Not that I don't agree. I haven't seen the evidence on it, but some people will say that rehydrating through liquid is actually better than IV. I don't. It doesn't seem to make sense to me, but I haven't done the research. For me, I've never used an IV with any of my athletes, and again, I don't train like high-level UFC fighters at this point in time. So a lot of my people are jiu-jitsu guys. They're not going to be able to afford an IV. So what we do is I use a product called Drip Drop. Okay, Drip Drop is kind of like a intense Pedialyte. It's used in I believe in some of the African countries to prevent dehydration in some of the population. Right. So it's some intense stuff. But what it is really it's just electrolytes and a little bit of carbohydrate. And I have my athletes slowly sip on it over time. We mix it with water. It's really just slowly get the rehydration back. And at this point, do not eat a meal that has a high fat content. Okay, I don't know why exactly the mechanism behind it, but anytime I've had a weight cut with an athlete and they've consumed a high fat meal, we've had stomach issues. And I think that may have something to do with just the fat just disturbs the digestion of the digestive system of somebody who's already dehydrated. So,
so the old steak and eggs breakfast, or the steak and eggs meal.
I mean,
maybe that was back in the day, and they didn't weight cut as much back then. Maybe that's a heavyweight thing where they didn't weight cut.
Yeah, I've heard like Fedor or would eat like bacon and eggs or something like the morning of the fight, and
right, but he wasn't cutting weight.
He wasn't cutting weight. Yeah, he wasn't cutting weight. So that would be what I would recommend for weight cutting. It's a simple process if you do it properly, and obviously I skipped over a lot of little micro details, but if you do not understand those things, if you don't take care of those are like the big rocks. If you don't take care of those big rocks, and you're thinking about tricks and Epsom salts and things like you're gonna miss the forest for the trees. So I would just say that do the least amount that you need to do to get your fighter to the weight. I believe the last UFC somebody didn't make weight, right? Yeah, Max. I mean, it was Max Holloway. He didn't make weight. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I think it could have been his fault. It could have been his trainer's fault, but it could have been the commission's fault. I think I heard something about the commission being too strict with it. But either way, he should be able. You should be able to make weight for your fighter as long as you follow the protocol how I laid it out, and most good trainers will.
Awesome. Okay, Ben, that was really useful, and I think it will give people something to work with when they're trying to get their own strength and conditioning and recovery program in place for their jiu-jitsu training. Or when they go to a trainer, it'll give them some information that they can then calibrate what their trainer's doing with them. Do you recommend, obviously you're a big fan of everybody getting a trainer, and that's not self-serving because there's only so many people that you can personally train.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that you go and find a knowledgeable person in your area that, I'm going to say a lot of biased things here, but that uses evidence-based practice, that is a critical thinker, that doesn't take what is thrown at them as fact, and that can explain the mechanism behind or the rhyme and reason behind what it is that they're doing. Right. So if my athlete asks me, "Hey Ben, why are we doing this movement preparation? Why are we, using bands?" Yeah, I should have an answer, right? Why are we using the landmine? Why should I eat, protein a couple times a day? I should have an answer. And if that's probably the easiest way to test a trainer's knowledge is to see if they can give you a simple answer. Okay, that's really what I look for. If somebody gives you a convoluted, long answer to a simple question, they usually don't know what they're talking about. It should be the smartest people I know how to explain the most complicated subjects in the most simple ways, and that's what I would look for in a trainer.
Awesome, always good advice.
Yeah. So if anybody, any of the listeners want to, have any questions, and I don't mind taking the time, just go to my Instagram. I'm at Coach BZ. Send me a question. I'm happy to help. Anything reasonable, I'm willing to help. If you ask me to do like 500 things, I might have to decline. But if you just ask me a simple question, is this a good supplement? Things like that. Is this a good exercise? What should I do? I'll try my best not to give you a answer that leaves you with having to ask me another question. I'll try to educate you, teach you how to fish, and that hopefully will get you critical thinking and get the word out to the community that just everybody's got to start using all the knowledge that we have and just kind of getting our info out there, the correct info, unbiased info.
And you have a lot of the exercises that you talked about on your Instagram as well.
Oh yeah. I have infographics on some of the supplements we talked about and exercises that people can do. I don't put a lot of detail into like how many reps and things like that, but you at least can see the form, right? Mm-hmm. You can mirror your form. Send me your form video. If you're not sure of how something is supposed to look, just send it to me. I'll give you a quick answer. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ben. Take care.
Thanks, Stefan.